All right, you shitbox junkies, let's talk about the obvious right now. Kpower has finally delivered on their NC swap kit. Did this take them too long? 100%. Did they betray the community, in my feeling, after going NA, and to the FRS? Totally. Honestly, I get it though. It's a business move. The FRS is a great platform. It is a great car. McPherson's right up front, and it's no NC, or Miata for that matter, but it's been proven, especially at Grid Life with Pete Granberg, that it is a capable car with a K-block in there, and K-blocks are great in there. Simple as that. So as a business move, I get it. As a man that got burned by his own stupidity trying to get it to work with RX-8 transmissions and has blown quite a bit of money this summer because of those two transmissions and my own stupidity of not realizing that I needed, dowel pins in my plate that it didn't come with until I got the Kpower kit, and I was like, oh, dowel pins! This is probably why I share two input shafts, which is funny because one of the guys that works at Kpower actually talked to me for a little while I was at ABCC. And he's like, man, I've ran my ZF on my K for like 3 years without dowel pins. No issues. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I went through two RX-8 transmissions, not so great. But that is also the great part now. Anyone that wants to do this, you can do it now. You don't have to go through the bullshit I did of sourcing an RX-8 trans and a 6-speed and doing tail shaft housing swaps. That's it. All you got to do is get a Kpower kit. So the question now is the Kpower overpriced or not? And is it right for you? I'm going to say right off the bat, if you want a turnkey car in one weekend, that is not too much. Trust me, that is a complete kit that has everything you need. You will not be going through all sorts of bullshit like I did getting that car up and running. Mike Bryant, the other guy who is now running a K-swapped NC in Grid Life, dude, he gave him the car and he had it back in a weekend from Kpower. Fantastic. Loves it. Runs great. He said a 133.5. I could only get down to a 134.5, I think, or something like that, even though my Garmin says I had a potential 133.3. And I guess that says something. It's not super fast. I'm not a great driver by any means, but, with Pete Granberg now breaking the track record first day in the morning of the event, 133 doesn't mean anything anymore. Now it's, 132 is the new hotness. So I don't feel that great about it all, or myself, but you know what? I'm going to give this car credit where it's due. As a guy who hasn't had a whole lot of track time in the last 2 years and hasn't driven all that much, the fact that it allowed me to throw out a 134 and a potential 133.3, great. You know what? I'm going to take that as a slight win, and I'm going to chalk it up to the car. The car is why I did that, not me. So yes, Kpower kit, worth every penny. If you don't want to fuck around with shit, $15 grand, not that much. But you might be saying, all right, I could buy an S2000 for that. You could. I'm going to go out there and put this out there right now. I love the S2K. Ruben runs this S2K. It is a very capable car. It is a fat pig compared to an NC. Simple as that. Suspension is more compliant in the NC. It is the overall better tool, in my opinion. Also, cheaper, and it's not a completely outdated platform. The problem with the S2000 is that it's so old and no one's really making parts for it anymore, or new ones from Honda. You're gonna have some issues running into stuff. And thanks to ASM pioneering and piloting those for the last couple of years in Grid Life, they've come across quite a few problems and created solutions for them. Ruben over the weekend, his rear spindle gave out, and that's not an uncommon thing with tracked S2000s, just an FYI. But this thing also will have its own problems, I, like most people who track my car, believe in the myth of the RX-8 hubs and bearings being more stout. So far, hilariously enough, the rears have had zero issues. I've had to replace the front hubs multiple times now. But the best part is, the last set of hub bearings that I put in the front were $90 for a pair off Amazon, and they haven't done a single bad thing yet. They are still solid. So I don't know what to say there. Timken, I've used a lot of Timkins and all that stuff on this thing over the last 2 years. I had to replace multiple ones year one. And people were like, oh, you got to season the bearing. And I'm like, fine, okay, I can believe that. Whatever, sure, whatever. $90 bearings up front on Amazon. Work great. Don't know why. Don't care. At the end of the day, everything is made in China. Don't think otherwise. And if not China, Taiwan. But China would argue Taiwan is still part of China. Anyways. Now, for those of you who are a bit on the cheaper end or like building their own stuff and have have an interest in just building things and kind of scoff at the idea of a $15,000 swap kit from Kpower, hey, I feel you. There is literally a way to do it without that, or at least without the entire kit. And this is proof of that. Will you have to give up, hydraulic power steering? Maybe. I mean, people make brackets and put them on the RX-8 subframe and then retain their NC power steering. I mean, RX-8 guys often switch over to NC power steering racks. Well, often. I don't know how often it is, but people complain, oh, the electric rack, I don't like how it feels, blah, blah. Which is funny, because the S2000 rack is the same as the RX-8 rack, and I personally have no issues with the RX-8 rack. I think it feels fine, but maybe I'm numb. Maybe I'm numb to something others aren't. It's a preference thing at that point. I like the idea of not having another fucking fluid pump running on the motor. I also like having less fluids to deal with in the car in general, especially a track car. The more of that shit I can eliminate, the better. The one downside is that RX-8 racks, their harnesses are known for getting shitty. Great news. You can literally buy the plug and assemble a whole new harness for less than $20 on your own to get it to work right. Ever since I rebuilt that harness that goes from the brain box to the rack, I have had zero issues with my power steering powering on at all. It's great. It's flawless. I don't mind. So let's talk about that. What does it take to actually get a K-block in here at the cheapest dollar? And without having to go through Kpower for everything. Which, there's also ups and downs to that. Let's talk about that quick. All right. I'm using an RX-8 subframe, which, even if you do utilize an RX-8 subframe, you will, and power steering rack, you will have to buy the Collins shim adapters, as you can see right there. They are adapters for the power steering rack that sends it forward and down a bit so you can clear the K, crank. And I actually had to clear it even more with my sway bar because I'm running a dry sump and the mandrel there. The argument here is that for the Kpower argument, you're getting a chromoly tube subframe. It is saving you a lot of weight. It is very spacious down there, and it's also very strong. If you don't really care about that, an RX-8 subframe, I think I got this and my rack for about $200. I unfortunately had to pay extra, more than I wanted, for my brain box here, and wasn't aware that I needed this brain box as well. Had to find that later, but it did come with all the high gauge wiring and all that stuff. And when I talk about the wire I had to remake, it would be this one right here. There's only 3 wires that actually go to this thing, but both these plugs on here and on the rack can be had for like $10. And if you know how to crimp anything, you'll be just fine. Advantage: no draw on the motor mechanically, parasitically from a power steering pump. I like it. You will have to extend your, there, I don't know if you guys can see that. You can look it up in one of my last videos. The steering column does have to be extended. Simple as that. It was a very easy extension. You just get a pipe that goes around the steering column and weld it on, you're done. Everything else, it's quite literally bolt on. The RX-8 rack bolts right up. Zero difference. If you buy a rack, or if you buy a subframe with a rack and all that stuff, chances are you're going to get some lower A-arms too. Never a bad thing to have, especially after I wrecked mine and completely egged my lower A-arm on the side. Never hurts to have extra parts around. So do remember that almost everything in the RX-8 to the NC is swappable. You're already most likely doing the rear hubs. You might as well do the front subframe. That's another thing that comes in. So let's say you go this route. You no longer have to do what I did by getting an RX-8 to K adapter and then having to do a tail shaft off a 6-speed NC and slap it on here, because this is not cheap actually. Each one of these transmissions was $1,500 from a yard. The NC2 and up transmissions are the same price point too. NC1s are dirt cheap, but like my old NC1 transmission that was in here and prompted this whole swap to happen, the fork for 3.4 is known to fail. Simple as that. Hence why I pulled the trigger. I was like, all right, I'll just go get the RX-8 trans because it's the same price as an NC2 reinforced transmission because they are the same transmissions. With that, you no longer have to worry about that. You could just as easily buy the adapter plate, which is far more reasonably priced than the Collins kit for these two. But there is a downside, in my opinion. The Collins adapter plate is aluminum, and so is the PMC one. They're a bit thicker, so you would have to run, at the end of the day, I actually ended up having to buy a Collins flywheel because my swap came with a PMC adapter plate, but they are literally the exact same size. I just didn't know I was missing dowel pins. Really, really wish I had known that. Could have saved myself a lot of headaches. And then buy the motor mounts and the steering rack mounts from Collins. I think you'd be at just, depending on how much you get the subframe for. Last I looked, a Collins flywheel was like $700 something, and a PMC adapter plate was like $5, because you don't want to use because the PMC kit requires you to use a 5-speed and do an internal slave and all that shit. That's why I switched to a Collins flywheel. You no longer have to do that. You can literally just go get a Kpower adapter or a Kpower adapter plate, throw it on, get some Collins adapter. Shit, you can make these yourself if you have a welder, in all honesty. I mean, they're not hard to make, but I don't love them. There's a lot of reasons I don't love them. The RX-8 motor mounts, they're placed kind of weird. They're not placed weird, but I got some aftermarket ones with polyurethane in there. And they're not great. This one's melting, and they're bolt through. So, you got to drill the subframe to get to the Allen bolt to actually tighten stuff up. It's not fantastic. I will probably be revising this to run a motor mount here to here. And then probably remake this out of chromoly tubing too, because these flexed over the last 3 years and were drooping pretty significantly. That's a development issue. That's just my, that's just how it goes. I've never had to make stuff like this from scratch. I figured 1/4 inch plate, steel, design the way I did so I can clear my, as long as I could fit in here header, it'd be fine. But it was not great. Besides that, wiring harness. Talking to Mike Bryant, he's seeing the same issue I saw when I first had my Haltech sitting here and here. When I hadn't created my bulkhead harness here with my mil-spec wiring and all that stuff. A lot of it was me making this was prompted by the fact I didn't like the Haltech sitting here. I wanted it in my glove box in there. You have two options for this, and I've seen people just cut a hole here and put a thing, and you don't have to build this, my mil-spec bulkhead is not necessary. I just do it so that, I can quickly disconnect and reconnect everything and have this motor in and out of the car in like an hour. Because what race car doesn't break? Simple as that. Mike was saying the same thing. He's seeing ECU temps get pretty high, and the dilemma with that is that this engine does create a good amount of heat in here, and when temperatures rise, resistance in wiring and electronics rises too. So your voltages may start reading off. Now, I unfortunately, the first year I did this, had quite a few problems using an eBay harness because, I thought I could get away with it for a year. I kind of did, I kind of didn't. It still caused a lot of issues. I ended up actually ditching the stock Honda map sensor because the voltages got so off at one point that I thought I was reading boost when I wasn't. There was a lot of issues running the drive-by-wire through that harness too at first. Cost me a lot of money with dead end time with dyno tuners. That didn't work out so well. So I do feel like Kpower should come up with a product that gets the ECU in there. But I did like what they did here where they have like a stock connector. It's very clean. It's a clean kit the way Kpower does it. I love it. I hate the fact that I had to like hack into my stock harness here and do all this crap and then run my harness and harness connectors over here and whatnot. This worked out decently, but I don't like it 100% here right now. I just feel like their Haltech should not be in the engine bay here. They really should figure out a way to shove it in the glove box. Besides that, if you're willing to take the time to build a harness, I think with all the tools that I ended up buying and using mil-spec wiring and a mil-spec bulk connector and all new brand new connectors, I think I'm $1,200 in with my harness. Do be warned, it takes a while to build a harness. It took a lot of nights to build a harness, and it can be intimidating because it's a lot of connections. And the first time I fired this car up, I honestly wasn't sure if the harness was just going to start on fire or not. It takes time. You have to think. I have like I think it was over 400 connections, side to side to side to side to side, because I have the brake at the firewall and the firewall to the engine. So there's a lot of termination, crimping contacts, inserting, all that stuff. It takes a while, and I'm not even running like a properly twisted mil-spec where all the wires are like perfectly concentrically twisted around each other. Like I didn't even use, DR25 here. I actually just, used wire cover because I wasn't sure if I made any mistakes, and I want to be able to get into that harness real quick to resolve any mistakes. Simple as that. Everything else, if you've got a welder and you're okay with making a harness, you don't have to go the Kpower kit. You can buy some parts from them and get away a little cheaper. You're gonna, you don't even have to use a header from them. You could buy the ASM S2000 header kit where you lob off the S2000 pipes and turn them around and use their adapter plate and put it all back together on the K block. And a lot of people say that header is about as optimum as it gets for a K block. Maybe, maybe not. I wouldn't even know. I built my own header. I'm hoping this thing makes more power than a stock S2000 manifold. And even on the K block manifold, the Kpower manifold, you don't have to go that route. You could use an S2000 intake manifold and an adapter plate there and probably save a bit there. It really all depends on what you want out of it at the end of the day. I still think it's a great kit. It would have saved me a lot of time. But my friends argue I also wouldn't use the entire kit because I'm an egomaniac that always constantly has to make his own shit to prove something. And they're not wrong. Hence this car. Hence the dirty carbon wing on this car. Everything in this car, it is an ego build. I needed to know if I could do this. Simple as that. Overall, the Kpower kit is not a bad choice if you want to be done in one weekend and have minimal problems. If you want to go about it the other way, feel free. Documented almost this entire build, and I'm telling you right now what you need: RX-8 subframe, RX-8 steering rack, RX-8 computer for the steering rack, one CAN bus adapter for the rack, and Collins motor mounts and Collins steering rack adapter. Kpower adapter to NC, and you're done. That's a motor sitting in here. Nothing else. If that, you can. The problem is you're not going to be able to source a harness other than from Kpower if you want a DR25 wrap like race spec harness, or you're going to reach out to a company and spend probably $3,000 specing a harness so it actually works with CAN bus up here and to the pedal and all that stuff, or you can make it yourself. The choice is yours, but I think we should all be happy that Kpower finally made an adapter plate for the NC transmission. Simple as that. However you guys want to go about it, feel free. You could make it a $5,000 build, where you can sink almost 60 G's into a car. That blows up a lot until a Kpower comes along and says, hey man, we made a plate. So, don't knock it. Don't knock it. You people who are like Duratec 2.5 supporters, that's fine too. I get it. $200 junkyard engine, and then, it's a Duratec. Full race motor Duratec blocks blow up a lot too. That's something I commonly see on the MX-5 groups. Sure, $2,000 for the swap. Barrier to entry a little higher on the K24 swap. But longevity and parts availability and reliability of a K block, you're not going to beat that with a Duratec. You're not going to beat that with much, in all honesty, besides an LS motor and maybe the FX V6 from GM. Maybe. Do what you want. Take this as you will. I support Kpower in that sense. I'm glad they made the plate. You don't have to go that full way, but there are pros and cons to both.